Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining our webinar today. My name is Bryan Caplin. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer here at Thoropass. Really excited to talk with Katherine Kelton to talk more about the essentials of health tech compliance. If you're listening in today, you're probably in the healthcare industry and thinking about information security compliance or knee deep in it, one of those two. That's why I'm really excited to have Katherine here. She is the charter member of our healthcare advisory board, and excited to hear what she has to share with us today. So, Katherine, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me, Bryan.
Well, let's start to learn a little bit more about you. Would love to hear a little bit more about your background and the work you've done here in the healthcare space for the better part of 20 plus years.
Sure. And thanks everyone for joining us today too. So I've spent the last 20 years in various legal risk and HR roles in heavily regulated environments, mostly healthcare. I currently serve as the General Counsel and Corporate Secretary for VHI Corp, formerly known as Vault Health, which is a telehealth provider of diagnostic testing and clinical trial support services. Prior to that, I was the GC and Chief People Officer for Staywell, which was Crane Stay Well. So for those who are familiar, a patient education company and a well-being platform that were part of Merck's Healthcare Services and Solutions division that was acquired by WebMD. And prior to that, I spent a decade in-house at Aramark, headquartered here in Philadelphia, where I'm based. I was a lawyer for their healthcare line of business and ultimately served as their global chief compliance officer for the enterprise.
Love the unique mix of large enterprise experience and kind of early stage startup experience. Certainly want to hear more about that. But first, a few months back, we came to you and introduced you to Thoropass. I don't think you were familiar with us, and told you about this healthcare advisory board that we were bringing. We sought to just further our expertise in this space. What attracted you to joining this board? How did we ultimately convince you to say yes?
Yeah, absolutely. And for those joining us, this is a testament to the power of your college alumni network. So use it wisely. But so for better or for worse, I've had the purchasing power for compliance software solutions now for about a decade. I've been in two health tech companies, sort of on the front line of developing B2B SaaS solutions. And so I've gone through the pain of purchasing and also been in the sales cycle as well. And so I was just immediately struck by the talent at Thoropass, the vision that they had to offer these solutions across functions and across industry, and really the thoughtful approach that the product team was taking to address solutions for those of us in heavily regulated businesses. So I thought it would be really fun and exciting to get it into a startup and help the team get in the heads of healthcare buyers and go to market.
Well, you've been hugely impactful already. It was wonderful having you at our inaugural customer event, Thoropass Connect, last month, and all of the insights that you're able to share there. So our audience today are probably pursuing health tech compliance as we speak. Maybe they're starting on their journey, maybe they're midway, maybe they've been doing this for a long time. Maybe you can just share some of the most common challenges and pain points that, customers, generally face when they're pursuing information security compliance in this space, and how do you tackle those proactively versus, waiting for a customer or a regulatory body to, kind of encourage you to be compliant, so to speak.
Right. So for those of you on the line who aren't lawyers, when the enforcement agencies call you, that's kind of late. So partnering with your legal department and your compliance department, if they're not one and the same, is my practice tip of the day. I think the challenges and pain points that I've seen are that the solutions out there, whether they be sold as healthcare specific compliance solutions or really, GRC or enterprise risk management solutions, is that they're often kind of one size fits all frameworks that don't flex with a company in their growth cycle. So as they grow and expand into new verticals, the technology just doesn't fit, or they're so complicated that they require a full-time person full-time staff to input data. They don't take advantage of what's been done. You can't map your compliance activity across frameworks, so you can't take advantage of what your IT team has done over here, what your product team has done over there, what your lawyers are worrying about on a different floor, and your financial controls that your SOX folks might be worried about if you're a public company. So you end up buying a bunch of expensive point solutions, and then someone is still tracking it in Excel. So, that's what we're all hoping to avoid, to get to this place where it all, makes sense and kind of rolls up into the center. You asked me how you might tackle those proactively. I think there it's really about collaboration. So, as a lawyer or the head of compliance, I don't have the biggest budget in the company. And so I'm going to look for my colleagues to help me make wise purchasing solutions that solve an enterprise problem. If I can partner with my CISO, because I'm not an information security expert, but if I can partner with my CISO to say, what are you shopping for? What are you looking for to solve our security concerns across the enterprise? Often, well, this is my hope, right? You can find a solution that will also work for a compliance regulatory framework, and solve some of the things that the lawyers have been trying to find technology to enable.
Yeah, I think it's a great call out. I think as we are talking with our customers, you're finding that sure, while it may be the CISO's primary responsibility to look after compliance for information security compliance for their organization, is not their sole job, right? It is going to involve their stakeholders in legal and other parts of the organization, or budget from those, but certainly buying in collaboration on whatever it's going to take to achieve the framework that you're pursuing. So yeah, let's segue into that. Let's talk a little bit more just around the kind of alphabet soup of frameworks that you often find in the healthcare space in particular, right? Which has certainly evolved and changed quite a bit in even the last kind of 10 to 15 years. I think for those in the industry, they know, beyond SOC 2, HIPAA, right? For a long time, was the primary framework that organizations pursued. But the last 20 years or so, HITRUST has really emerged as kind of the go-to cybersecurity framework in the industry. Maybe we can just set the table for the audience on the industry's relationship with these different frameworks, and how you might evolve from one to the other as you grow as an organization.
Sure. So I think this is where partnership again and collaboration is key, because as the lawyer, HIPAA's table stakes. So I was a baby lawyer in a law firm representing providers when HIPAA was first promulgated in 2003. So dating myself, but then 2013, I was at Aramark. So now I'm a business associate, and HIPAA's directly, we're directly subject to it. So I've seen the compliance ramp from both perspectives. And I think it's important to note that it hasn't gone away, and it is table stakes, and it's table stakes for a provider, and it's table stakes for a business associate. So, and it doesn't come with a certification, right? So the only person who's going to tell you that you did or not, did it right or didn't do it right is either your in-house counsel, or it's the enforcement agency at the back end of it. So, the HITRUST certification and the SOC 2 certifications are important, and they are market driven. But you do want to make sure you're starting from a place of understanding what the basic legal requirements are and solving for those. So if you're the CISO and you're going out to find a HITRUST solution, you better make sure you're also solving for HIPAA, because otherwise, that ship has sailed and you've got some work to do still. So, you do, for HIPAA, for those of us who have been through it, it's often a very manual exercise, and you're sitting around the table and you're talking about your data flows and your vendor relationships. And all those things are critical to really any tech solution that you're going to put in place. So that human exercise still has to be done. But, that can get labor intensive. It is labor intensive, and it can get complex in a high growth environment where all of a sudden you have 50 people who have the ability and the authority to buy a SaaS solution. And now, you're really trying to play catch up. So I think where the industry has gone is very smart, in that they're looking at a certification that you can get that helps you in the market. It's a proxy for compliance, but it also solves for HIPAA and understands that needs to happen regardless of what technology you have in place.
Yeah, one of my earliest learnings in joining Thoropass was that HIPAA is a self-attestation, right?
Right.
You you kind of go through life thinking all these guys, oh, they're HIPAA compliant, they're protecting my personal health information. Well, companies saying they're HIPAA compliant, but are they really? So it's, these new frameworks have come in to obviously fill that void to have that third party kind of validation that you are doing the right things to protect, either your customers' data or your patient data, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
So thinking about that, when have you really seen companies mature from simply being, HIPAA compliant to pursuing these more formal frameworks like SOC 2 and HITRUST? When do you
Yeah.
normally see that occur?
Yeah, it's a great question, because I've come in at various points on that journey, and I would say, certainly early days, when there really weren't tech solutions, and we were still talking about M health or digital health, it's sort of a different ballgame. But now I feel like the minute you start to fill out a vendor security assessment or do an RFP to sell into a relatively sophisticated company, you're going to be asked about HITRUST certification because it really has become a proxy for security compliance for heavily regulated businesses. So I think it's smart to think about HIPAA security and HITRUST at the same time because the same sort of exercise, whether you're doing it with people around a table or you're putting in a solution that helps you enable it. But again, important to remember that if you have a security failure in a healthcare environment, you also have a privacy failure in that healthcare environment, and nothing is going to solve your behavior, your training, and the buy-in from your people that this needs to be the way we do business. So I think what I typically see is when you've got that piece down and you've got people sensitized to the type of information that you have and that you need to protect and what your value proposition is to your clients and your customers, because if you're in healthcare, it's got to be that the information is secure. Then you're starting to think about what does the market expect, and is that HITRUST or is it SOC 2, or what specifically are our clients and our prospects looking for?
Yeah, absolutely. We know that, high trust or SOC 2 obviously requires more resources and more people to
Yeah.
pull it off versus HIPAA, but the benefits, tend to outweigh those investments. But let's talk about that a little bit.
Mhm.
What market advantages have you seen, whether in your own organizations or with colleagues? What advantages have you seen to companies that do pursue a formal framework like HITRUST? And, have you seen it really help them, move up market or, win perhaps a big enterprise customer that they were trying to win? Just love to maybe share with the audience that may be thinking about pursuing HITRUST. Is it worth it?
Yeah. I think in the healthcare market, it is. And I know, it can solve for other environments as well. But particularly if you're starting to look at big pharma or, depending on your market size and how you think about upmarket and where you ultimately want to go, even if you're at the beginning part of your journey, if you, for example, keep an eye on that big pharma's vendor security assessment, you don't want to do that first out of the gate because you'll never get your product launched. But if that's where you ultimately want to head, then I think it's important to understand how to get there and what they expect, and that typically is HITRUST for a third party healthcare vendor, at least in my experience. But using those security vendor assessments, I think, is a good way to go. And I will say also in the startup environments where you often have sophisticated engineers, sophisticated product folks, they're the ones that are really attuned to this and understand that market. And so when you're selling into them, if it's B2B solution, they get it. It's a different situation than when you're in a brick and mortar hospital environment or even a smaller, company that's been around a long time that might not have gotten its tech to that point.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And we are certainly seeing, I think, a lot of the trends that I think probably a lot of software companies outside of healthcare saw in the last, maybe 10 years ago, where if you're trying to win a mid-market or enterprise customer, they're going to expect that you have SOC 2. I mean, I think that expectation now has gone further down the chain, further down market for sure. Healthcare space, same thing. If you are a digital health or, health tech startup trying to win that enterprise or mid-market customer, or certainly do business with one of the big medical payers, HITRUST is kind of table stakes now. At least
Mm-hmm.
the level of HITRUST may depend, but It's pretty much an expectation that you're going to have that if, of course, you're touching any type of PHI. Let's stay on this kind of technology kind of bent for a second, or just in general. Maybe you can share, any tech solutions or just processes overall that you have found, particularly effective in facilitating healthcare compliance efforts, right, or information security efforts inside the space. Anything beyond maybe what we've talked about already today.
Yeah, sure. So in my last company, it was all about FHIR enabled, right? So every API that came out, the expectation was you were doing that in your environment, and it would be FHIR. Whether you're connecting into, you want to sell into Epic, you want to sell into a big hospital system and connect. That's what they were talking about. And so, I think it is important to have that sort of sophisticated lens. But the effective processes I've seen, I sort of alluded to already, that are less tech focused and more sort of end-to-end business processes. Because again, when you're shopping for a solution, you want to make sure you've hit the basics and that you've got your people and your frameworks and your processes ready to layer technology on top of that. And that's sort of a maturity assessment as well, I think. And so if you are in a small startup environment, you're thinking about how to do both at once because you're not going to wait. But if you're in a mid-market company that's been around some time, there are probably some assessments you want to do before you put the tech into place. And that is, if you're, again, selling into a provider, you're worried about clinical outcomes. And so what are the systems that are measuring clinical outcomes and patient safety, and thinking about how you insert your tech into that environment. So I think that, I don't know if that answers your question, but it's really about sort of what are the business processes and the outcomes that my clients are looking for.
Yep. Makes perfect sense. All right. Well, kind of getting close to the end of our time here. Let's pretend like we have a little time machine going to the future, going backwards. Let's look 5 to 10 years out, right? Where do you see the future of healthcare compliance going? Is it more regulatory frameworks, greater use of technology? If you had to make a prediction over the next 5 to 10 years, what this space is going to look like, what would that be?
Yeah. Well, I think we will all have jobs. I don't think the system is going to fix itself anytime soon.
Yeah.
But we're here to do the good work. I think, and I'm sure you've seen this too, that the business of healthcare is becoming so individualized, and really moving out of brick and mortar hospitals and traditional healthcare systems into people's homes, right? And so I think a lot of time and effort has been spent to figure out how providers can reach people where they are in their communities, in their houses, and what's the technology that assists that, whether it's a portal or a laptop that a caregiver can use to communicate for their family member, or to how to deliver education and really check in on a patient at home. So I do think that's where we're going to see a lot of this technology assist, but of course, connect back to the hospital system or the care provider that is sitting in a traditional brick and mortar environment. I think that's really going to be key. And, making sure that humans are still the focus of the effort. That's not going to change.
No, hopefully not.
We can talk about AI, but I do think the human-centered care provider is the way to go.
Yes, well, wouldn't be a webinar in this day and age if AI wasn't mentioned in some form or fashion. I think, no doubt it will play an increasingly large role here across every part of the kind of compliance value chain. We're certainly seeing that already today in space. But going back in time a little bit, so just thinking about early on in your career. Right. What's something that you've learned kind of early, maybe in the last 5 or 10 years that you wish you knew at the start, or advice you could impart on maybe someone who's early on in their, legal compliance, information security career within the healthcare space?
Sure. Honestly, I wish somebody had told me that compliance was an alternative, and how fun it is. It was not mentioned when I was in law school. It was just not a thing. And granted, this was 20 years ago, but I get a lot of enjoyment, I think you can tell, about talking about practical business solutions that drive legal compliance. I am sort of an evangelist for compliance now, and I talk to lawyers all the time about how, and law schools, like, this is where the jobs are. It's great to be a lawyer and to understand the law. It's another thing to deliver actionable advice, and nothing teaches you how to do that faster than being the person on the other end who has to make it happen, right?
Yeah.
And it's just it's a great way to become part of the business and understand what you sell and how you sell it, and talk about the value proposition of, everything I've learned about being a business person as opposed to being a lawyer, I've learned from compliance. And it's just it's a very creative field, I think, for those of us who look for that in our jobs. So yeah, I think that's the biggest takeaway. So for those of you who have found compliance already, congrats. And if there are any lawyers on the line, looking to get into it, I'm always happy to have that conversation too.
Love and creativity are not two terms you often hear in this space, although we do often like to say at Thoropass that we want to be the world's favorite compliance platform. So
I like it.
that very much resonates. Catherine, if people want to learn more about you or get in touch with you, what's the best way to do that?
I'm happy to put my information in the chat, but you can find me on LinkedIn, just Katherine Kelton. And it has my my email and everything else you need. So happy to be in touch.
Wonderful. Please do get in touch. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today. If you want to learn more about the great work that Catherine and our advisory board is doing, or you want to learn more about Thoropass and the things that we are doing here in the healthcare space to help companies get compliant with HITRUST or HIPAA or SOC 2, or name your favorite framework, you can go to thoropass.com to learn more. You can get in touch with us there. You can also find me on LinkedIn as well, and happy to connect with you there directly. So, Catherine, again, thank you so much for spending some time with us, and thank you all for listening in today.